Welcome to the Somehow Together podcast, where we explore faith, connection, and everything that holds us together. I'm Erica.
And I'm Miranda.
Life is messy.
And relationships are messy.
But we weren't meant to do this life alone.
And God, He is still working in the middle of it all.
So we're still showing up.
Somehow together.
Hi, welcome back to the Somehow Together podcast. I'm Erica, in case you don't know my voice yet, and I'm here together with my friend Miranda, and we are going to talk about the subject of social intelligence. On our first podcast, Miranda mentioned this concept of social intelligence, and as a counselor, I've heard of emotional intelligence a whole lot, but I hadn't really thought about social intelligence, and so I wanted to look into it a little bit, and I've done some research, and so I thought we would share and kind of discuss and dialogue about social intelligence. Miranda, do you have any thoughts about what it means? What is social intelligence? What does that mean to you?
So social intelligence is actually a newer phrase that I recently heard. I have experienced ideas around social intelligence before without it being labeled social intelligence. And so one of the ways that I've kind of come to understand social intelligence is the ability to recognize and understand the way that people act and engage within social settings. And that is the way that you personally approach social settings, and the ability to see how other people interact and engage within those social settings as well. And so that's kind of the briefest way. The definition of social intelligence is the ability to understand one's own and others' actions. Social intelligence is learned, and it develops from experience with people and from learning from successes and failures in social settings. And so it really is a pretty important skill that helps people succeed in all aspects of their life. So I think it's an emerging term that's starting to kind of flourish a little bit better. Most people are going to, like you said, have a little bit more understanding about emotional intelligence. And so you do a lot of work in that field. So what's the difference? What's the difference between emotional intelligence and social intelligence?
Mm-hmm. Well, emotional intelligence is like focusing on understanding your own emotions and feelings, right? And the feelings and emotions of someone else. While social intelligence is learning to navigate social situations and interactions and understanding social dynamics.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that social intelligence is interpersonal between a couple of people, and also social in regards to like the big picture and the global picture.
Yeah.
Community-wide picture. I've just been thinking about it a whole lot, and I know we could only like start touching the surface of this subject, but I still think it'd be kind of fun, especially when it comes to thinking about how social intelligence is important in the church. And so let's dive in. So since we know that social intelligence is learned, do you have someone that you feel like was a really good model for you, somebody that modeled social skills or taught you how to get along with people while you were growing up?
No, not really.
Okay.
I think I say this a lot to people, as I wish somebody would have taught me how to be a friend. I think we touched on that a little bit in our first episode, but I don't know that I had somebody strong in a social setting that taught me really how to relate and be able to read people and read social situations well. I think most of the learned experience came from failure or successes. And so being in those spaces and being like, oh, I probably shouldn't say that. Or, oh, when I say that, they react this way. And that's really good and encouraging. And so I don't think I had really one person. And then when you think about the dynamic growing up, especially I think of teenage years, and we're just a bunch of teenagers doing life together. And so the unhealthy things I bring into relationships, they do. And so then you see each other model this kind of unhealthy way of relating to some degree. And so again, I think for me, it was mostly through trial and error and being in spaces and recognizing, oh, that didn't land well, or, ooh, they just kind of like cringed, or, those micro movements or those subtle things that people give you when you're tossing something into
Yeah.
a new social circle.
Well, what's really great is that you can even pick up on that, because some of us struggle to pick up on those micro, the subtle nuances of a relationship dynamic, and so I feel like you have really great social intelligence, and so the fact that you don't feel like you had a lot of role models, you must have paid attention to those learning opportunities really
I'm
well. So
I'm gonna call that a thank you to my trauma of childhood that made me be
yeah,
hyper aware of other people to eliminate as much harm for myself as possible. So I think that probably really
uh-huh.
did play a part in that, to be able to read other people.
Yeah, yeah. Growing up, I had parents, both of them, who were neither one firstborn children. They were both middle children, and they both had this approach to life that we want to make it fun and it's going to be a
Mm,
good time. So,
I love that.
um, my parents both, we had a lot of people in our home. We had a lot of
That's
parties.
cool.
We had a lot of game nights. We had time with extended family. We had time with friends from church. Growing up, I just had people around me a lot, and I watched
Yeah.
my parents interact with people all the time. And my dad is this farmer in a small town who walks into any restaurant and knows people, right? And they all like
Mm.
smile at him and say, "Oh, there's Steve here," and they're happy to see him. And in fact, I found this newspaper article recently that was about my dad and his farm. Like, I don't know if he's purchased
Oh,
land, and it said if Steve Caves isn't known among his friends as smiling Steve, he ought to be. Because my dad just
yeah.
always walked into places with a smile, and he just knows how to make people feel cared about. Um and my mom was always a lot of fun. She just liked to laugh. I remember them always having a good time. And so
That's
um
awesome.
and they just had a lot of friends. And so that comes from
Yeah.
good social intelligence, right? And I don't
Mhm.
necessarily know that I've ever thought about breaking down their behaviors to figure out what I learned from them. But
Yeah.
overall, I know that my way of interacting with people is similar to how they do, and I picked it up. So anyway, why do you think social intelligence matters? And why does it matter when we're trying to build a community within a church?
Oh, man. I think first off, it just matters. I think that there is a lot of hurt that is caused by people when we aren't aware of the things that we are saying and the things that we are doing and the way that those things impact other people. And so, more than the feelings that we have around that, because that would be emotional intelligence, it's the way that we approach people and help them to know that they are seen and that they are cared for and that they are valued. And so when we come into those spaces and places and we don't recognize that for others, we actually unintentionally create unsafe places for people inside the church. And so instead of having uplifting and encouraging interactions, we tend to hurt others, I think, a little bit more. And that creates conflict that like ruffles right under the surface, where it's like, oh, I don't know what's wrong, but I know something's wrong. Right. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think congregationally and community wise, there's this layer that social intelligence plays, to where you move into a space just like anything else, and it's not all about me, it's also about the other people. And when we start to live our lives not just for ourselves, but we start living them with other people in mind, it really does change the way that we interact and engage
Mm-hmm.
with others.
Yeah.
um I think that another piece of that is that people, when we lack awareness as a community or as a group of people, other people start to feel unseen or unvalued. And I think that's where a lot of quiet quitting hits the church level, is we're not aware enough of the people kind of on the fringes of our own social circles. And so we don't open ourselves up enough to invite more people in. And so then they don't feel that same sense of connection that they see happening around them. And then they just leave and we don't know why.
Sure, that makes sense. Yeah. Or we don't even notice, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And I think too, well, not two, but in addition to that, the when it comes to our like how social intelligence impacts us spiritually, because I do think that that's a piece of it as well, is when, like, because discipleship is so heavily relational, without healthy interactions and without being aware of how we show up in social spaces, people don't feel safe enough to be honest. They don't open up and become vulnerable. And so their growth starts to stagnate and it stays at almost a more surface level because they don't know how to safely go deeper with the people around them, because there's not this sense of security and safety within that group or within that
Mhm.
conversation or within that I say space a lot, but within that space. And so you can't grow people deeply if you can't encourage this environment where relationship f- flourishes,
Sure.
and that happens through being aware of others as
Mhm.
well as yourself. So,
Mhm. Also, we have to have social intelligence when we encounter people that come in for the first time, right? So they might not necessarily be integrated yet into the body, but we want them to know that it's a good place to spend time and to hang
yes.
out, so that we can have the chance to tell them about Jesus and help them grow in their faith. But if we come across as not noticing, not
Mhm.
listening, judgmental,
Mhm.
those problematic behaviors can drive someone away and or even keep them from coming back a second time. And so
Yeah.
it's from the time they enter our doors,
Yep.
um, until they leave the church. At the end of their
Yeah.
life, hopefully,
Yeah.
social intelligence matters, and how we treat each other matters,
Yep.
um, and we just need to be aware and keep trying to grow in that area.
Yeah, and it's so hard
Mhm.
because when you're in a church family, a church body for so long, and you become connected into that, it becomes a lot harder to see outside of just the group that you're a part of. And so it takes a lot of intentionality to say, you know what, when I show up this week, I'm my friends, like, we're gonna get together outside the church. We're gonna talk later, or we're probably gonna text through the message, like whatever.
Mhm.
We're gonna have those points of connections. And so when I'm here today, when I'm here this week on Sunday, I'm gonna make it a point to not like cluster up with the people that I'm closest with. And I'm actually gonna make it a point to approach somebody that maybe I don't know as well, or a new face that I've never seen before, or something intentional to help that person be seen and know that they have value, and that we are so glad and so grateful that they're joining our church community that morning. But it takes this level of intentionality that's really hard, because we want to engage with our friends as well, but it's
Yeah.
more, I don't know, I just feel
Yeah.
like it's bigger than that.
I
So,
think it is, and, we're gonna get into it in a little bit, like, some of those specific things that we can do that helps a person walking in for the first time
yeah.
feel loved and cared for. And what you're saying sounds hard, and it sounds, complicated, but it's not always. There's,
Yeah.
like, some very simple things we can do to show that we care, and we notice them
Yeah.
coming in, so and
Yeah.
and show them that we want them to be here and included, so
Yeah.
what are some of the problems, though, that we see come about, especially in the church, when people don't practice, good social skills or good people skills?
Oh, I mean, conflict, right? Like,
Okay.
there's going to be conflict even in the healthiest of relationships. But when we don't practice good social skills or people skills, or we're not working to actively improve in those areas. I think conflict is the number one. I think gossiping happens more because you are unhappy, and so you want to share that with other people. And so there's a fine line between venting to somebody else and gossiping about a situation or about something that you've experienced. And so I think that happens, and then that plants a lot of other like seeds that go out that cultivate more conflict. And so I think that is a big problem. I think that when we're not clear in our communication from a leadership standpoint, so I'm going to put on my leadership hat right now,
Mhm.
and when we're not clear in the way that we communicate with others, and I think that it creates a sense of instability within the organizational structure as a whole. And so when we don't practice good people skills, it can create this underlying sense from other people of like, they don't know what's wrong. I kind of said that earlier, right? Like we don't really know what's wrong, but we know there's something wrong. And so when the leaders aren't practicing good social intelligence, that filters down into their leadership teams, which then filters down into the people of the church. And so while you can never really put your finger on it, there's this thing that doesn't that doesn't that doesn't seem to fit what we
Yeah.
say.
Mhm.
And so I think that can be a problem. And so yeah, I think that it's again one of those things. There's this book, we'll link it down below, but it's called Managing Leadership Anxiety by Steve Cuss. And I think that's the first time I started hearing this idea of being more aware of other people in spaces, just as if you are aware of yourself. And so super great book. I won't go into all of the nuts and bolts about it, but um he never used the phrase social intelligence, but
Sure.
now I'm like, oh, I think that's what he was talking about. And so
Mhm.
when we as leaders can manage our own internal systems that we are struggling with, it gives us the ability to recognize what is going on outside of us. And so when leaders practice good social intelligence, it creates and opens up this space for other people to do the same.
Mhm. That makes sense. Yeah, that's great. Um, yeah, as you were talking, I'm like that the things I've seen over the years include like being easily offended, right? Like taking
Yes.
offense to things,
Uh-huh.
or being annoyed at somebody taking your role or
Mhm.
maybe doing something that you wouldn't do. And we, instead of thinking about how we want to empower them to be able to do their ministry, we're thinking about how it impacts us instead. And so
Yeah.
that kind of selfish perspective of what is the church providing me instead of what is the church here to do for that other person, or what is the church
Yeah.
trying to um, provide for that whole group over there, even,
Mhm.
where my group, I'm not even interested in that. Why are we putting resources into that? That kind of
Yeah.
um, tension can sometimes be a problem, and it's often an indicator of like maybe we need to grow in that social intelligence area. Um,
Well, and I think too that
mhm,
when we struggle with social intelligence, like you were just saying, that challenge part of let's maybe grow in that area, it becomes more of a judgment and it becomes more punitive for people as opposed to an opportunity to improve or grow in that way when there's not a strong sense of social intelligence at
mhm.
play.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just to be honest, you and I know that we're not perfect at it, right? So
No.
we are assuming that we are taking everything as from a posture of wanting to grow and get better and
Yes.
practice
Yeah.
all of these things alongside everybody else around us.
100%.
And so,
Yep.
yeah,
We do not have it all together, guys.
no, we don't. Um, so yes, I get that need to grow, but we wanted to take it from a posture of learning instead. One of the areas I've seen people struggle with social skills is sometimes in small group settings where
Mm.
one person will talk a lot and
Mhm.
dominate the whole conversation, and where are in a conversation with someone who wants to talk but will not listen and not practice
Mhm.
listening. And so those are just some basic I mean, I'm sure it's not just in the church, it's probably everywhere, but
Yeah.
like, um, people really struggle to listen. And part of that's because of their own needs, and that sometimes that anxiety that you were talking about, that unmet anxiety, the unmanaged anxiety that they are struggling with. And so
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
end up not listening well. And then
Mm-hmm.
it kind of shifts the dynamic in the group or in the relationship. So do you feel like, I guess this will go back to what we were just talking about. Do you feel like social intelligence comes easily for you? And, or do you feel like there's areas of weaknesses that you wish you could improve on and that you'd be willing to share?
Yeah, I think that it comes easier for me today than it did yesterday, and it
Okay,
came
sure.
easier
Yeah.
for me yesterday than it did the day before. Uh, but all jokes aside, I think that it became easier the more I I understood the power of active listening and the skill of being curious, and we'll get into a little bit more of that later. But over the years, as I've really stepped in and practiced those things, I think it has become much easier for me to move into spaces and do that. Reading people has always been easy for me, like I mentioned earlier. And so that's always been something that I've been aware of. I just never knew what to do with it. And so that's where a lot more of that trial and error came from. Weakness that I'd be willing to share. I don't like small talk. So for me, moving into spaces is actually really hard because people see me as this like people person. You're Miranda's a people person, and I am, but I'm a people person. And so moving into spaces where the expectation for conversation is very low and it's very minimal and it's very surface level, and all of those things are great and they're needed and there's a place for those. I like to dive deep. And so I find myself super awkward and super uncomfortable when it comes to those small talk pieces. And so I think that is something that I would like to cultivate a little bit more, is how to really engage in healthy small talk situations with people where I don't come across as awkward or maybe diving in too deep too fast with people, because that's kind of what I tend to do. And I will say, I'll be like, you don't have to answer this question, I'm just curious. And then I just go for it. But I would like to cultivate, and not in like the get out, like get out of the conversation fast way of like, just, hey, how are you doing? Oh, I'm great. Okay, great. What great weather. Not that kind of small talk, but like true, just like, we only have a couple minutes. Let's chat well.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense, but I think
I
that
don't know,
is
is it even
something that I'm not very
possible?
good
I'd
at.
love to know. I would love to know if that's possible, because the lobby is not my favorite place. Like when you're just in
No.
the church lobby and you're like passing
Yes.
someone and you're just like, "Hey, how's it going?" And or you
Yeah.
have like just a few seconds because you want to pause and talk to them, but you don't really know what to talk about. And I know we
Yeah.
can't dive deep, but it's good to see you.
Yeah. Yes,
Um,
exactly.
it's
Exactly.
it is. I would love to know if there's like some skills that we can learn around small talk, quick conversations, and get better at it. That
Yeah,
that would be a
because I
great.
do think that's a
Yeah.
part of social intelligence too, right? Like, we can sit here and pretend that it's all the deep stuff and all the good,
Mhm.
good quote unquote
Yeah.
conversations that we have with people, but it starts in the lobbies, right? It starts at the doors. It starts in those first awkward small group interactions, and as you're trying to put a group of strangers together to dive into God's word. Like, it exists. It's in the grocery store aisles and at the shopping malls when you run into somebody. Like, it truly does exist. And I find myself super awkward and super uncomfortable. And so that's my vulnerable moment of the day, is I don't like
Mhm.
small talk. Not I don't
Okay.
like it, I don't know how to do it well.
Yeah, yeah. I agree. That would be one of my areas of weakness as well. Um, Unlike you, I am not good at picking up on subtle cues.
Mm,
I take things at face value and I take people at their word, and I don't necessarily pick up on those extras. And so sometimes that's a problem, especially when you're a counselor, which I am. Um, and I'm getting better at it, but
yeah.
I really, that's not an area that comes easily to me. Also, I can sometimes be really direct. I just want to get to the point
Mm, mhm,
and just take care of business. And I don't know that everybody always appreciates that as well. So I know
mhm.
that's kind of just some areas where I struggle or want to learn and develop new skills around, picking up on cues
Mm-hmm.
well and paying attention to what might be underlying their comments or their
Mm-hmm.
behaviors, and then also sometimes wording things in a more subtle way so that maybe the listener will hear things better. So we're lucky because, like we've been talking about, social intelligence can be learned,
Yes.
and it
Praise
can be,
be.
yes, and it can be practiced.
Yeah.
So when I looked up where did we learn about social intelligence, it was hard because there wasn't a whole lot out there that I found. But I did find one of the leading books on social intelligence, and I don't think they actually even use that phrase, was Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, which was written in 1936.
Imagine this isn't
I
an
know.
old, a new idea after all.
It's not a new idea. So, the cover of that book looked so boring, and I know that I think Jason's brought it home before, so I'd seen it before, but I was like, "That looks so boring. I don't even wanna read it." But I decided to listen to it, on the library app, and it was so good, and it was so many different stories and examples of people influencing other people in
Mm-hmm.
positive ways, and so I loved it, and so he gives very specific strategies, and so I thought we could talk through some of those things. But I did wanna share one story he talked about. He talked about the story of Charles Schwab, which you've probably heard that name before.
Mm-hmm. I
Well,
love this.
Charles Schwab was paid $1 million per year in the steel industry at the same time that others were making between $400 and $5,000 a year.
That's insane.
I know. So 1 million versus, let's say, 5,000. And it's like, you ask, what makes him worth so much more than everyone else? And it wasn't his skills in steel production, but it was his ability to influence people. And when people describe what he did, they say he knew how to make people feel important.
I love that.
He was able to motivate a lot of people to work together toward a common goal, which justified his $1 million salary.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy? Some of his key strategies included these things. He used positive reinforcement and not criticism.
Mm-hmm.
We all try to, especially as parents, like tell our
Oh
kids
my
what they're
goodness.
doing wrong, right? Or people will often tell leadership, church leadership, what they're doing wrong. And pastors sometimes try to motivate people by pointing out what they're
Mm-hmm.
doing wrong. And that criticism doesn't actually motivate change. And so I think that's an interesting fact. And he
Do
picked
you
up
know
on.
do you know that that's actually a skill that not a skill, but a concept that works from a very young age?
Sure.
So when I was working in early childhood education, it was one of the ways that I would teach my teachers to help correct bad behavior in the classroom as long as it wasn't dangerous behavior was to, instead of constantly calling out the kid who was being naughty, it was to reward the kids who were doing well. And so if it
Sure.
was time to come to circle time and Johnny's off over doing jumping jacks in the corner, as soon as Mary sits down, it's, Mary, I love the way that you're sitting at the carpet waiting for the story. Thank you so much. And then, Jenny would sit down and, Jenny, I'm so excited. Thank you so much for joining us for circle time. I'm so glad that you're here. And then, Billy would sit down and it'd be, Billy, you came to circle time. We're
Yeah.
so glad. And then lo and behold, Johnny would make his way over to circle time and he wouldn't be bouncing around the classroom. And so that's actually something that is taught in child development from
Oh, sure.
like circles in a very young age.
Mhm. Well,
And
and
it's not
when
a new concept.
no, and when you would want them to change their behavior, you point out what they're doing well, right? And you
Yes.
celebrate what
Yep.
they're doing well, not necessarily what they're doing wrong.
Yep.
Yeah, and so we can learn from Charles that way. The other thing one of his other strategies was that he made people feel seen and valued by looking for what they were doing right, which is just
Mm-hmm.
exactly what you were saying.
Yeah.
He also influenced people through relationships, not through authority.
That's
So he
huge.
relied on making connections with people. He got to
Mm-hmm.
know them. He got to know what they were good at. He got to put people in their places where they're gifted,
Yeah.
and and encourage them when they were going through a hard time. So that kind of connection. And he
Mm-hmm.
also created emotional energy in the workplace. His positivity generated enthusiasm.
Yeah.
And so you go, this guy has got it going on. He's got great social intelligence, so we can learn a lot from him. So they said that he learned to turn getting work out of people into unlocking the potential within people. Do you think it can help people perform better when they feel seen? And
Oh,
why?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And why?
I mean, I
Yeah.
don't actually think any of us would disagree
Yeah.
with that question or with that statement. When people feel seen, there's a deeper sense of belonging. And so, I mean, I've heard it said before that people don't quit jobs, they quit leaders or they quit managers. And so when you cultivate the sense of being seen and there's a deeper connection to the employment or the leader or the mission, right? Like I think of a church. We don't want people to be connected to us as leaders. We want people to be connected to the mission and vision that God has on their life and in the world around them. And so when people feel seen and valued and they cultivate this deeper sense of belonging, not just with the church, but with God as well. And that opens up just so many more avenues. They perform, I don't want to say perform because church shouldn't be a performance,
Yeah.
but maybe in employment you perform better because you're not afraid of getting yelled at. You're not afraid of getting fired. There's a little bit of safety in failure to some degree. And you know that the person who is in charge of you is actually for you and not just in charge of you.
I love that.
If that makes sense. I don't know.
Yes, I love that. So why do you think it's so much easier for leaders to criticize instead of encourage? Why do we take the negative approach instead of the positive one if we know positive works?
I think it's easier, honestly, which is really sad to say, but I think that this is going to tie into emotional intelligence, I think just a little bit.
Sure.
Because when we are frustrated or when we are angry, those are stronger emotions that come out. And when we are not practicing emotional intelligence to be aware enough about where those emotions are coming from, we become more reactive to them. And so when we are frustrated or upset with somebody and that feeling emerges, it is easier to lash out in that moment of criticism or correction than it is to respond out of a place of let's talk about what just happened. Here's where I know your strengths are. And so it kind of confuses me a little bit that this is what just occurred because I've never seen that from you before. You're a strong employee, or you're a really great Bible study leader and you relate so well with people. And so what was going on inside that prompted this type of reaction or response from you? Like, that is very different than you can't talk to people like that, right?
Yes.
And so that's where I think social intelligence and emotional intelligence overlaps because it's that emotion that drives that reaction and response. But when we're willing to work through the emotional piece to get to a better response, then we become more engaged with the encouragement and less with the criticism. And in that encouragement, we can still challenge people to do things differently.
And our brains are wired to look for problems, right?
Yeah.
It's just how our brains are wired. And so our brains usually go to the negative.
Yes.
Unless we really work hard and retrain them, which I talk about in counseling a lot. But it's like,
yes,
but they just go to the negative. They go look for the
Yep.
problem. We want to fix things. And so, and that's just part of our how we're wired, how God
I think
made
we
us.
see it.
Yeah.
I think we see it in reviews too, right? Like if I have a bad experience with a restaurant, I'm going to go tell everybody like, don't eat there. I got sick, or their chicken was awful, or their kitchen was disgusting. Like whatever it is, whatever I'm unhappy with, I'm way more likely to spread that. And I think we all are more likely to spread that than we are the positive. Like I can't remember. Okay. Other than maybe recently 2 times, but because it was very good eating experience. and I tend to really like food. But when you have a pleasant experience, my first thought is not like, oh, I have to tell my friends that this restaurant was really good, or they need to go try this, or the checkout person at the shoe store was amazing, that she fitted me with the perfect shoe, or like, that's not where our mind goes. But as soon as we have a negative experience somewhere, the first thing we think of is, oh my gosh, I have to tell somebody how horrible
Yeah.
this was.
Warn everybody. Tell
Yeah.
everybody, right? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
So we are wired for the negative.
I think
And so
so.
it takes a lot of extra effort to slow down
Mm-hmm.
and to think about the positive, right? Or to think about the
Yeah.
strengths and to reword what we want to say in a way that helps promote their dignity and
Mm-hmm.
their self-worth, and to even slow down and view it as this is a mistake they made versus this is them as a human, they're a mess up, just we have
Yeah.
to really slow down and rewire our brain through practice. And
Yep.
it's hard, and criticism just comes easier, and
Yeah.
but we don't benefit as a group or even as an individual when we do that. So here's a question that I think is kind of tricky or hard, and we'll see if you can come up with an answer. If we are all prone to opening ourselves up to people who seem to like us, so if we have somebody in our midst who is really good at pointing out our strengths, or is super positive, or very enthusiastic, and they brood energy. So if we have those people around us, are there things that we need to watch out for? Like, how do we know when it's like a genuine, healthy positivity and energy versus maybe somebody who's manipulating us or blowing smoke up our skirt?
Well, I'd have to wear a skirt first in
I
order
don't
for
wear
that to
skirts either.
happen. Yeah, that's really hard. I think part of that is time and relationship. So I will actually speak to the first thing, that like the things that we need to watch out for. I think sometimes when we only surround ourselves with positive people, we and I don't even actually want to say positive people, because that's the wrong that's the
Yeah.
wrong phrasing of that. But when we only surround ourselves with people who are only going to encourage us, because encouragement is important, we wouldn't disagree with that. But when
Sure.
that's all that they do, we start to get what kind of like confirmation bias. There's nobody who's going to challenge our thinking. There's nobody who's going to be like, are you sure? Because that's not really how I saw it happen, or that's not
Mm-hmm.
really how I felt it happen. And so I think that when we only surround ourselves with people like that, we're almost breeding an environment for unhealthy relationships to flourish. And so then those red flags, if you will, or those warning signs over when are we being manipulated, when are we just being puffed up, or when are we actually being spoken truthfully to, become a lot harder to discern. I think in order to discern the disingenuous people, we have to surround ourselves with the opposite of that. I can't say that word, ingenuous, like real people,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Where we're going to hear some of the things that we're doing that don't make them as happy. And yet it's not in a shame way or a judgment way or a condemning way, but in just a healthy, like, hey, did you mean to say this? Or did you mean for that to sound like this because it did when you said that? That helps us recognize kind of the fake encouragement that we may be receiving from other people. So I don't think it's as easy as like picking up on one or two things. I think it's more having a diversity in the types of people that you engage with regularly, because that's when those
Yeah.
warning
You see the
signs are
whole
going to
picture,
emerge.
right? You can
Yeah.
see the whole picture I love that idea. Diversity, but then also like credible. It's like, it's
Yes.
hard to know when somebody's credible until you really get to know them and spend time with
Yes.
them over
Time.
time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you watch them um over a period of time, you journey with them through different experiences, you watch how they
Mm-hmm.
react in certain ways, in certain
Yeah.
situations, and then they build credibility in your life, and then it's important to listen to them at that point. So
Yeah, because I think that there's a lot of people. I mean, you've seen it as a pastor's wife and as a
Mhm.
leader in the church, and I have as well. And I think one of the things, if I'm allowed to say, that frustrates me is when people who don't engage in the church, they just come to church,
Mhm.
are the ones who are criticizing everything happening
Sure.
in the church,
Mhm.
because they don't have that relational equity to be able to say, maybe we could do it different, because they're
Mhm.
just coming to, they're not engaging with. And so that creates a little bit of tension.
Mhm. And it's one of the dangers of, like, social media, right?
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
people don't have a relationship with a lot of the names that are on social media or
Yeah.
the church page or, um, certain forums or
Mhm.
platforms, and so, um, you haven't earned the credibility to speak into people's lives when you are just a Facebook friend.
Yeah.
Or even it but people do that too, and
So many.
it doesn't come across very well. So,
No.
you haven't earned that credibility.
Mhm.
So, Dale Carnegie in his book mentioned several times Jesus's teachings. And I don't think it's a Christian book, but he did talk about Jesus a lot. Um, what are some of the things Jesus teaches us about social intelligence?
Oh, man. I think that he teaches us quite a bit. I think one of the things that I really appreciate about how Jesus approaches people is that he treats everybody that he meets with dignity. Like, there's no hierarchy in his interactions and engagement with people. And so he saw people, he saw individuals. He didn't see categories or labels, right? Like, where we would say the tax collectors or the sinners or the outsiders or the, the whomevers. He saw them as people. He gave, like,
Mhm.
he engaged with them on an interpersonal level that made them feel seen. And I think that builds trust faster than probably anything else. And so when we are trying to model after Jesus and how we approach people, that ability to kind of strip away the things that we see or the things that we've heard about them or the things we think we know about them, and instead to just see them as an individual person, will help build trust with them, I think, way, way faster. The other thing, which I think is huge, sounds funny coming in from a podcast where we're speaking a lot, but Jesus asked so many questions. There are, I think I read, it vacillates between like 300 and 308, depending on who you ask. But he asks about 300, just over 300 questions in the 3 years of recorded ministry that we have with him in scripture.
Wow.
And so he asked so many questions. And the cool thing is, he already knew the answer. Like, he was so much more interested in what other people had to like what other people had to say, or to get them to this place of thinking and understanding by asking questions and not just telling them what they should think or believe, even though that's what they were asking him to do. And instead he asked questions. He was curious. He helped them engage with themselves to come to these realizations of truth that he already had for them. And I think that's amazing. And honestly, and ironically, actually, I guess, is I think it's Dale Carnegie who says, it's more important to be interested than it is to be interesting.
Yeah.
And
I
we
love
see
that.
that
Uh-huh.
modeled in
Mhm.
scripture. And so I think that curiosity, when we approach situations, especially ones that are full of conflict and strife, when we can approach them with curiosity, that disarms defensiveness, and it creates a point of connection with somebody else, because it's no longer us just telling them our opinions or our thoughts, but we're actually engaging with them and drawing them into a conversation. And so I
Yeah.
think Jesus models that really well. I mean, there's so many other things. Like he leads with empathy and compassion, and he, he's not afraid to go into spaces. He speaks truth differently than maybe we do with our kind of sharp edges. He shows us what it looks like to manage conflict without it escalate. Like there's just so many
Yes, so
skills that we
much.
can learn from Jesus.
Yes.
What's something that you like as you've thought about like Jesus and his role in social intelligence? Is there something that you've thought about or that has stuck out to you?
I don't know. It's not necessarily from Jesus, but other places in scripture. I've really loved like thinking about like the idea of building each other up, right? That comes from
Mm-hmm.
scripture. So that's like a form of encouragement. Don't tear each other down, build each other up.
Yeah.
Um, be quick to listen. When I memorized the book of James a long time ago, my favorite, the one that the phrase that still comes to mind, and then still that God uses all the time to slow me down is be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. Those are just like some basic social skills
Mm-hmm.
that I've learned from being in God's word and learning about the scriptures, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's Jesus that teaches us the golden rule, isn't it? It's like treat
Yeah.
others,
Treat others. Yeah.
yeah, how you want to be treated. I don't know exactly that. That's not his exact words, but the golden rule comes from scriptures. And so um, there's just so much we can learn about how we interact with people. And I'm
Yeah.
just really appreciative we have that guide in scripture.
Yeah.
Um, what are some ways, some practical things we can try in our churches or in our relationships to begin to practice making others feel important? How can we show people that we're interested in them?
Yeah, I think the first thing I again, I'll say it once, I'll say it a million times, it is be curious. I mentioned that earlier on when we talked about this, and I was hoping that something along these lines would come up because I think curiosity in people is one of the biggest gifts that we can give them. When we are curious about their lives, when we're curious about what they're going through, when we're curious about what they're thinking, what they're feeling, why they got to where they got. Like curiosity for me, that idea of being curious when it comes to other people is something that I think really does help people feel important. And I hope people don't hear this and they're like, oh, well, we just have to be curious. And then people, because it's so much deeper than that. Like, because I truly do think that there is healing that takes place when we are curious with one another
Mm-hmm.
instead of combative or instead of what
Judgmental, right?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, or we're just like coming at them or um I don't want to say aggressive, but
Yeah.
kind of in a
Mm-hmm.
way, right? And so I think that for people to feel important, and I think again, going back to Dale Carnegie and even that idea of in the workplace, when we point out the things that people are doing well and that we see in their lives that are well and that they're strong at, pointing out their strengths. I really loved the way that you encouraged, Kathy after Bible study today. I love seeing you connect with other people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the things I learned about when I was learning about spiritual gifts was that people tend to see the world through their giftings, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
and the church and what needs to be done through their own spiritual gifts. And they tend to not to sometimes undervalue the gifts of someone else.
Yeah.
And like a server who's like down in the gym picking up tables and chairs might be annoyed and frustrated at the person who's standing there having a conversation with someone else.
Yeah.
They're like, why won't they help?
They're avoiding work.
Yeah, they're avoiding the work. And I'm like, but they just have a different gift, right? And
Yeah.
I think part like what you were saying, it's important that we slow down and we pay attention to what they're trying to contribute,
Mm-hmm.
where they're coming from, what's motivating them,
Mm-hmm.
in those moments, and have a respect for the differences that are in
Yeah.
between us.
Yeah.
Um,
It's that blindness, right? Where and same thing with um love languages, right? Like
Mhm.
if your love language is to give gifts, then you assume, like there's just a lot of assumptions that are made about that. Or sorry, not if your love language is to give gifts, but if your love
Mhm.
language is to receive them, then you just assume that the other person wants to receive gifts too. So you give it to them.
Yeah.
And there's might be physical touch or words of affirmation or something
Yeah.
completely different that you're missing the bar on because you're just
Yeah.
only
We tend
doing
to
what you
show
know that
love the
you
way we
like.
wanna receive love.
Yes.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
My kids used to my oldest especially talking about the golden rule earlier and
Mhm.
showing things that you want to receive. He used to, when he would be mean to his brother and I would say or like, Colton, why are you being mean to your brother? And he's like, well, that's how he wants to be treated. I was like, what? Like, nobody wants to be treated with meanness. And he's like, well, that's the way he's treating me. And so he must want to be treated that way because if you're supposed to treat others the way you want to be treated and he's being mean to me, that must mean that he wants me to be. And he was like 3 or 4. He probably didn't say it that articulately, but like, I was just like, oh no. how do you, how
How
do
does
you help
how does
them
he
see
doing
that
that? Yeah.
different, right? But that's that idea of we
Mhm.
tend to give the way we like to receive.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And so keeping that in mind will help us to, respect what other people are trying to do because
Yeah.
maybe we don't quite understand it. It's not the way we would do it, but
Mhm.
we can learn to look at people and see their value and what they're contributing. And we hope they do the same for us,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And um and we just all try to keep journeying together and growing in that connection and environment and common mission that we have as a church
Yeah.
or even in as a family, in our homes. So,
For sure. Like don't be mean to your brother.
yeah.
He doesn't actually want to be treated poorly. Well, and I think the
Um,
cool
Go
thing
ahead.
is that it's just like most intelligences, they can be improved, right?
Yeah, practice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, he mentioned 6 ways to make people like you. So if we want to
Mm.
like find ways for people just to win people over,
Mhm.
um, these are where you can start. And we've mentioned some of them already. But number 1 is be genuinely interested in people.
Mhm.
And so
Yep.
you've already mentioned that with the curiosity. We're asking
Yeah.
questions. We're trying to listen, right? Smile. That was the number 2. Like, just smile. I keep telling my kids, they're always like, why are you walking through the grocery store smiling at strangers? And I'm like, because what does it hurt, right?
Yeah.
You smile at
Yeah.
people. My dad was Smiling Steve. So I learned it from him. We just smile at people
Yeah.
and you can win people to yourself that way. Remember that a person's name to that person is the sweetest sound.
Yes.
Our church a while back read a book called, was it Get Personal or Let's Get Personal? It's something by Orange. Anyway,
Mhm. I think it was
but it talked
yeah, I can't remember.
but it talked about the importance of learning names. And so as a church, even I know Jason talks about this with his staff and
Mhm.
um in the kids department and the youth department, we were trying to learn the kids' names. We were just like, learn people's names. It makes them feel important when you remember their names. And so
Yeah.
it's a value that we try to work out here. The next one is be a good listener. Encourage others to talk about themselves.
Yeah.
So just ask questions. It's not that hard. Just ask questions. People want to talk
People
about
will
themselves.
talk about themselves.
Yes, they will. They like it.
Everybody's like, "Oh, I don't like talking about myself," until you ask them a question, and then they will
Yeah.
actually talk about themselves.
Yes. And so maybe that'll be one of our awkward small talk things is we just need to have some good questions that we ask people, right? When
There
we're
you
in
go.
the lobby. Yeah. I ask the same questions. I need some new ones. Number 5 is talk in terms of the other person's interests.
Mhm.
So, what are the things that they're interested in and excited about? And number
Mhm.
6, make the other person feel important and do it sincerely.
Yes.
So, that's what we kind of talked about. We're not trying to blow smoke up someone's skirt, right? We're trying to make sure that they know that we actually do see their value and that we
Yeah.
are thankful that we're with them.
Yes.
And So, since we know that social intelligence is learned and it can be practices, we know it comes easier for some people than others, and it takes practice. Failures and successes teach us, right? What's one thing that maybe you're inspired to pay attention to or try to practice or learn moving forward?
Fleshing this out with my voice. But moving away from the generic questions of how are you? I don't actually think I asked that one a lot. I learned a long time ago through like my chaplaincy training and stuff like that, that's just a terrible question to ask
Mm-hmm.
people. I'll ask it more pointedly. How are you doing today? Or how are you
Mm-hmm.
doing right now? Or how was your excursion with, and I'm a little bit more specific when it comes to the how are you blank questions. But one that I think we we shuffle, especially with new people, into asking like, what do you do a lot. That's another very
Mm-hmm.
common generic question. And I saw it recently where somebody asked, what do you enjoy the most about what you do? So instead of getting to like what it is that they do, they get to share about what they enjoy about their job. And in that then opens up a whole new level of conversation, because
Sure.
now you're not just like, oh, I'm a salesperson. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
that's cool. Like, where do you go
Yeah.
from there?
Yeah.
Right. But
Yeah.
instead of it's tell me about some, like, what do you enjoy about what you do for work?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I
That's a
really
great.
enjoy that I
Uh-huh.
get to blah, 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 blah. Right. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
anyway. So I think I want to incorporate, like, try to figure out and engage more around less generic questions that tie to generic questions we typically ask.
I like that. I like that tip. Can I claim that as mine too?
Yes. Absolutely. I was going to ask, do you have one?
No, I like that's a really good one. I've been sitting here trying to think how I'll answer that question, and I think it's similar. I just want to ask more questions with a sense of curiosity,
Mm-hmm.
um, with the intention to find the value in the next person, to find the value in the person I'm talking to. Not
Yeah.
necessarily just to engage with them so that they feel happy they're at our church or that they're talking to me, but just like so that they feel important, like engage
Yeah.
them at a level that will make them feel valued
Because
beyond
they
the
are.
greeting. Yeah, I do.
Yeah. And
We love them. Yeah.
yes. And that is
Yeah.
what I want people to know. I think for me, and I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
speak for you because I know you
Yeah.
pretty well, is that we truly do want people to know that they are seen and they are loved and they are valued, even if it's the first time that we are meeting them, because it's not about knowing things about them. It is about knowing who created them. And that in and of itself gives the people that we come into contact with an unlimited amount of value,
Mm-hmm.
worth being seen.
I
And
love it.
like, that is my
Mm-hmm.
heart, where I'm like, yes,
Yes.
I don't want it to be fake for people. I don't want them to be like, oh, she's just doing that because she says she's going to on her podcast. No, like these things come out of like the depth of like my soul and who I want and how I want them to be able to see themselves
Mm-hmm.
too.
Well, even this conversation comes from that place. Like, how can we be
Yeah.
better at being like Jesus?
Yes.
And then how
Yeah.
can we love people the way he taught us to? And
Yeah.
that comes from learning about things like social intelligence and
Yeah.
picking up
As
on
odd as that is.
cues. Yes, and things like that. It is what drives both of us, right? It drives me to keep learning and keep having these hard conversations or fun conversations sometimes, but like um because I like to learn. Um
Mhm.
yeah, but I hope that this conversation that we've had over social intelligence will help drive people to pursue new skills to help them best
Mhm.
engage with the people
Yeah.
around them. So,
Yeah. I agree.
all right. Well, as we get ready to wrap up, we like to do something called the somehow together question of the day. where we draw a random question from our prompt jar to close out our time together. And so our question of the day is, what's something small that instantly makes your day better, Miranda?
Something small that instantly makes my day better is my really obnoxious dogs.
Oh,
I love them so much. At the time of this recording, I think by the time it airs, I'll still be without them. But I will be away from them for close to 2 months by the time I'm reunited back with them. And I notice myself as I approach the door, I'm like, the puppies are gonna greet me, and then I get home and they don't. And I'm like, oh, sad, because they're not there to greet me, not because they hate me, but
because
they're not there.
They moved to Utah with Nate already. Yeah.
Yes, they're in Utah with Nate already. And so I don't know. There's just something about being greeted at the door by your dog, no matter if you've been outside for 2 seconds or, 2 hours or 2 days, there's something about it. And the head lay right on my lap, or I don't know. My puppies, it's small, but it makes me happy almost immediately.
I was wondering how you were doing without your puppies. So
maybe not as well as I thought I was, actually.
Taking some time to reflect on. You need to FaceTime your dogs.
Yeah, they don't listen to video. They'll perk up their ears when they hear my voice, but they won't look at the screen.
Sure.
It's very weird. We've tried, clearly.
We've tried to do it with our cat and Olivia at college too. So they don't like. I
don't know what there's. I don't know.
No. All right. Something that is small but that instantly makes my day better is my first drink or sip of Diet Coke each day.
Oof, the first sip.
It's this first sip. It's even the cracking open of the can. If I'm at work, I usually drink cans. And so I do love a good, fountain drink with Pebble Ice and stuff like that. McDonald's Diet Coke's the best. But at work, I'll crack open that can and take a drink. And I'm like, okay, I can make it through the rest of the day. I love this. Love this drink. And it just makes my day better. Awesome. And I love Diet Coke. And so people that know me know that I love Diet Coke. So
there you go.
Anyway, well, thanks for being here, and we will see you again on the Somehow Together podcast.
Talk with you guys later.
Thanks for spending time with us today. If this conversation resonated with you, please share it with someone you want to help feel a little less alone. And as you go through your week, ask yourself, where in my life do I need togetherness right now? Until next time, we are somehow together.